And hello, ladies and gentlemen, the Facebook
Hello.
world. All right, now I'm going to share this real quick to the SMUG group.
It's funny when we do these. I have a 3-monitor setup, and by the way, any of you guys, especially working in the office, whatever, you guys don't have at least 2 monitors. Get a second monitor; it will change your life. But I have 3 monitors, and it's always enough until we're doing these live events, and I've got stuff just scattered around, and I just realized like I feel like I need a 4th monitor.
There we go. I finally found the button. Facebook buried at.
I see it.
And we are all live. Maybe give it a minute or two more. You said the Mariners are up.
We were talking, right before this. I know Joe's at least a little bit of a baseball guy. Some of the analogies he throws out. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Mariners finally broke their, I think it's 21 years now out of the playoffs. It was the longest in professional sports playoff drought. So pretty exciting. They're up in the 6th. I need to, I've got my phone off and away, so I'm not distracted by that. But pretty exciting. I'm hoping that they win this series so that we get a home game. The Seattle crowd deserves it. So,
yeah, I don't watch sports, but you're right. I was a baseball guy. I played baseball, and
I feel like the analytics
fairly successful
would be a big thing for you too. Just like it's
a thinking man's game.
Yeah.
And no one was thinking in the early 80s, so it was fun. Plus having an 85-mile-an-hour fastball at 16 years old helps. And a lefty.
Yes, especially as a lefty.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that baseball is so unique in that. It's like left-handedness is only like 10% of the population, but a huge percentage of the professional players.
Oh, I mean, we have such an advantage. But we can talk about it all day long, and no one cares about that. So let's roll on to ServiceMonster.
So I hope everyone listening has had a good month. Been an interesting one on my end personally. Been a little bit in and out dealing with a couple of things, but the team's been carrying on, doing well. We've got some big things. We've got. I don't want to take that away from Asher. Asher's got a big announcement coming up here in a little bit that some of you guys might have already noticed that we're really excited to talk about. We've been dealing with infrastructure changes. So I kind of talked about our test environment and what had been going on since we upgraded our server infrastructure almost 2 months ago. It's been 7 or 8 weeks now, but we had to do the same thing in our test environment. We were getting a bunch of errors and things like that. So it was making the QA team pull their hair out, or as they joke, they're both bald. They always joke, well, we already lost our hair. So they're, it was causing just a lot of frustration there. And so
delays, right?
And delays. Yeah.
And people were calling us like, hey, if you watch the webinar, Empower webinar, right? There were a couple things that were supposed to be right around the corner. So that's what he's ramping up to. We're a little bit behind because we've had some illnesses. We've had some missing stuff. We've had some infrastructure changes. So our whole QA process came to a crawl there for a good 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely been. I'm happy to be coming out the end of it. Let's just say that, coming out of the tunnel,
and everyone's healthy and everybody's good now. So we're in a much better spot. But it was rocky for a minute there.
So we've got a small build coming out next week, and that's going to clean up a lot of bug fixes that we've kind of been working on over time. We also have a pretty major change for our enhanced users, if any of them are listening, that we're excited to roll out. They're one of our corporate partners, so that's going out. I'll get a detailed list, obviously, in our release notes of all the bug fixes and things that affect you guys, but we're happy to get some of those out. Our support team has been chomping at the bit to get some of these out. So that's coming out. We still have 6.7 just right around the corner. We talked about on the webinar. So if you guys are listening and you did not see that, we'll link that webinar. It talks in much greater detail about the FMS changes and what that looks like. We're super excited to get those out. On the mobile front, we're still working on 1.5.0, like Joseph with dealing with some illnesses on the dev side there. So it is in full QA right now, just dealing with bug cleanup and polish. We're still probably at least a couple of weeks away, but he's made some pretty significant progress on when he's been here. And we've got a new build coming out that we're going to be testing next week. So keep your fingers crossed. We chunk a big part of that off. The QA process is one of those things that you have to be careful when you're going through a large kind of swath of QA that, you know, the changes that you're making don't then break other things already fixed, right? Because you don't want to have this back and forth that can happen. So it's kind of where we're at. If you guys, again, didn't watch the webinar, we'll post that and we'll have direct links to the mobile section versus the FMS section. I highly recommend you guys take a look at that because Joe actually does a full walkthrough, kind of shows what's coming. We also have some other features that are tied along to that, right? Like the 1 day only view. It's a specific security role that only restricts the technician can only view the current day. They can't go forward or backwards. There are some bug fixes. The UI is completely revamped, which is why I think kind of showing that the email editor is completely changed. It's much more modern. It's smoother. It's easier to understand. You can also create templates directly in the mobile environment. Now, they are not full HTML templates. There are a lot of reasons why that's not the case. You can still create those HTML templates in your full desktop version of ServiceMonster, right? But on the mobile side, you can create text-only templates that also have those merge fields. So if you have something out in the field, you just need to, you know, make a quick template that just needs to throw out some basic information, like maybe an invoice balance and a client name. Boom, you can have that. You can save it on the fly, and you can use that in the future. So that's coming out. So lots of fun stuff there. And then the other thing that is behind us, I shouldn't say fully behind us. I think Kim and Ash are both. There's a bunch of things going on the website side. So I think without stealing his thunder, Ash, you want to hop on and maybe talk a little bit about the big ServiceMonster news on the website?
Yeah, so very exciting. We finally got the .com domain up and running. So now when you go to ServiceMonster, it'll send you to servicemonster.com, which is awesome to have. It looks nicer, it feels nicer. All of your login links, any links you have bookmarked are totally unchanged. They will all redirect from .net to .com, and then login and 6 are still on .net, so those won't even redirect. But it's an exciting time for the website. We also will be coming out with some blog content so that if any of you wind up changing your domain, maybe you were a carpet cleaning company in northcarolina.com and now you have clean carpets northcarolina.co, you can reference that blog post when it's out to kind of help make those changes easier, because as we found out, Google does not always like it when you change your domain. And there's definitely some lessons we can pass on to you guys to help you avoid some of the pitfalls that we had to navigate.
Yeah, it's highly complicated. If you guys are going through that, definitely recommend that you have some help if it's not kind of your skill set or so forth. But I think the interesting part is ServiceMonster.com has been owned. It was owned by, I think, a service company outright for many years, which is why it took this long to kind of own that domain. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting to have Joe maybe talk a little bit about, wanting that domain, why we wanted it, and then be on the lookout for that blog content, because it can definitely be helpful for you guys understanding, how the website rankings and making sure that you're not severing those links, right? Or how to build them back up, so to speak, over time. So Joe, what can you kind of want to talk about maybe that? I mean, it's probably something that some of our owner operators have to go through, right? When they have to purchase a domain and go through that process. What kind of led to this?
Vanity. Because if you do the ROI, is the .com worth it versus the .net? The answer is probably not. And I don't know. Right now, the answer is I don't know, because we're just now implementing it. So we had principalfocus.com, if any of you guys remember way back when, before ServiceMonster came out, we were actually principal focus. And nobody could remember that, right? And then obviously ServiceMonster is much more sticky. So we decided to name the company after the product. This is like what, 10 years ago plus. I mean, we've been around for 20 years. Keep that in mind, right? 20 years we've been a SaaS company. So making this domain purchase, I always joke, it took me longer to rename the product ServiceMonster than it did to name any of my 6 children. My wife's less genial about that joke, but when I found out it was a .com, I was like, okay, I can live with that. Is it a big deal? I don't know, but we're just going to move with it. And so we built everything around .com. .net. And we looked at the .com, and at the time there was a Squatter, and they wanted some obscene amount of money, and we were like, nah, probably don't need it. We can just move forward. And then someone bought it from the Squatter. It was a company out of New Hampshire, some company named ServiceMonster that installed like giant, huge water pipes. And they didn't do anything with it. It was like a 2-page brochure site for like 10 years. But he knew I wanted it. And so him and I were back and forth in emails and for 10 years. And then finally I was like, look, we can do this deal, and basically cut the offer in half and where we had left it years ago. He accepted it. We moved forward. Done deal. And then it sat there for a year before we moved it over because of the complex nature of the migration, in addition to the fact that we wanted to kind of rebuild our site. If you guys have been following in the whole marketing and bringing in some outside help, CFO or CMOs, chief marketing officers, Fortune 500 type hitters to help us do some things. Turns out we didn't really need that. But now we know we didn't need it, which is important. And we ended up just killing the website rebuild and doing the migration. Now we're going to tackle the website rebuild. So for you guys, would you do it? Would it be worth it? It would be worth it if you could get massive SEO benefit, right? For us, going from .net to .com probably isn't going to change a whole lot. But if you go from I'm just a carpet cleaner.com to best carpet cleaner in Bellingham, there's something to be said for that, right? Your domain as part of your SEO strategy, it's a good idea. Is it the end all and be all? Absolutely not. Because anything you do that you have control over counts at most 50% to the Google engines to rank your site. The rest of it is external signals that you can't do anything about unless you're maintaining backlinks from reputable source. Like if you get a backlink from us, that's a very positive signal to Google. So is it worth it? I don't know. You'd have to see. Is it worth it from an SEO point of view? Is it worth the effort and energy? Is it a vanity thing? That's kind of what we did after 20 years. It's just like, we should own .com. I got tired of too many people saying, hey, what's this site? Get those DMs all the time, right? Now I don't get them anymore. So that's where we're at. I don't know how much help that was to you, other than if you're thinking about it, make sure you're thinking about it for the right reasons, right? Is the ROI there? Is it going to serve an SEO need? Is it going to somehow make your company more reputable or, better? That makes sense. I mean, I see people with clip art logos all the time, and we talk about like, geez, man, Christmas, can you upgrade that, please?
Right.
So your .com may, or your website name may kind of feel like clip art at this point, if you didn't choose wisely. So that's all I got, Adam.
Yeah,
well, not a lot of help, but
I mean, that's really the important part of me. I mean, obviously from a brand perspective, choosing your business name is already complicated enough, making sure you have the website, to match if you can, and going through that kind of just, that's something that all of our, owner operators and so forth have to deal with, when they set up their business. So, yeah, I think, when you really look at the internet as a whole, .com and .gov are the ones that people immediately think of, right, in terms of reputation and things like that. So that, like you said, that's a big reason why we wanted it, was just like to like you said that. Yeah, I think that's enough. We can move on from that, but yeah, we're super excited, and there's more to come on the website. So before we get into the SMUG stuff, though, we have a special surprise. We have a big announcement that we have hired Mary's replacement. Her name is Elena. I won't steal her thunder at all. She's going to hop on here and we'll completely put her on the spot. She started literally on Wednesday, so right into the fire here. But welcome, Elena, to the team.
Hello. Thank you.
So you'll see Elena start popping up in blog posts and video help and webinars and that kind of thing. So she's drinking from a fire hose right now, trying to learn everything ServiceMonster. That takes a good couple weeks in order to get oriented. So, but yeah, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Elena?
Yeah, so my name is Elena. I'm from California. I've been in Washington for about 1.5 years now, and I love content creation and video editing and helping people succeed. So I feel like this is a really good fit for me.
Yeah, we're very hopeful. It takes us a while, and you've heard me say it a million times: hire slow, and we really took us 4 months to find Elena. We went through a lot of decent people that I think a lot of marketing professionals and owners would have just said, "Okay, position filled, I can move on," and it just wasn't quite right. So we're very excited to have her, and I cannot wait to see what kind of passion we can steal. So very good. Thank you so much, Elena.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, we can move into some SMUG posts. We actually have some really, really good ones. We had to trim a couple because I knew that with Joe and I kind of diving into some of these that we're going to eat up some time here. So the first one is from January. And they were asking for advice on how to best enter business contacts from networking groups as lead sources into.
Wait, did you say January?
Yep, that's her name.
Oh, that's not the time period.
Correct.
Okay,
that is.
Let me clear that up for everyone else, because I know I wasn't. I'm like, why are we pulling stuff from January? Okay,
the post was from a week ago.
Yeah, awesome.
So, yeah, so in their particular instance, they had business contacts from networking groups, and they wanted the best kind of advice on how to enter those in as lead sources. And one of the reasons I wanted to shine a light on this, as always, there were some really in-depth replies from Jimmy and from Daniel, both kind of offering their insights. Joe chimed in as well. And so I kind of wanted to go over what I would consider probably the best 2 practices. You can kind of use either of them. And then just do a quick little show and tell here, which Elena, this would be something that you will do once you get kind of to date. Joe, you want to make sure I can share my screen?
Yeah,
here?
You're already good.
Perfect. Look at you. That's why Joe is the man. So as we're here, I'm just up on the report section to save some time. But anytime you enter in an account or an order in ServiceMonster, you can create a lead source, right? So when I'm in here, I won't bother putting in the name here. I just want to look at this lead source section. When you click that little magnifying glass, it opens up on the campaign side. So you can just start searching, right, for a campaign. So like I've got some Google campaigns, really interesting names I have in here for my Google campaigns, but I can grab those. If I just have like a complete list of gibberish here, I can just create a lead source on the fly. So that's kind of an important note. If you guys aren't aware of how that works, kind of just, be mindful of that. The other side of this coin, though, is the account referral side. So if you have an account listed inside ServiceMonster, you can select them as your referral. So in this case, I've got Adam Smith and so forth. And so what that allows you to do is, if I just close out of this, look up Adam Smith really quick and hop into that account, it allows you to do is on the account itself, you can add your notes, you can add tags, right? You can create a subtype towards that customer. So like if they're all part of a networking group, you can kind of group them together in this manner, right? With a tag or with a subgroup. And then you can put all kinds of notes that you want on that. And you can track this over time with that report, which I'll get back to here in just a second. So it's important when you're doing this that you guys are not just tracking the initial account, like when the lead first comes in and you first get that initial sale. You're not just tracking that lead source. You're also tracking the repeat invoices that come from that, by the way, as well, so that you kind of have an idea if they're helping on the retention side as well, right? And if your retention efforts are also working. With all that said, a lot of people aren't aware of the account referral, which is part of the reason why I wanted to kind of shine a light on that. So if I go to my reports now, there are actually separate reports for account referrals and just your general lead source campaigns. So if I go to my account referral summary here, and you can see that Adam Smith had a response and a conversion, which means that they had an invoice that came from that. So the conversion is 100%. Now, the invoice I attached it to had $0 on it, so I should have added some total in there to kind of show what that looks like. You can now come in here, and if you track it in this manner, you can, over time, track who's referring, who are my kind of VIP clients. You can kind of create campaigns to help further encourage that behavior and also maybe reward them, right? If you want to just stick to just lead sources, which is some of the suggestions that came in were kind of listed like that, you can do that. Now, in this particular example for January, they were involving, I'm just going to put in Adam Smith Jr. here. They were involving BNI. And so what they suggested is for the lead source, when they create it, they have some sort of naming convention like this, BNI, and then they would either have general BNI lead sources that cover a couple of different things, right? If they're a repeat customer, if they're a first-time customer, or so forth, or they would actually put the customer's name in there. And so, like if January, for example, who we had said, if that was their lead source, they would do that, and then they would track it in that manner.
Not the customer, the referrer.
Correct. So I know I went through a lot there, and I apologize. I probably should have gone a little bit slower on parts of that, but that's really kind of how you, it depends on how you want to set it up and run the reports in the background. If you want to kind of, go the official way that we've created with the account referral and have your more detailed notes in that way, or if you want to just keep it under kind of more condensed lead sources, either are workable. I think it just kind of depends on what you and your operations team want to kind of have set up. So,
yeah. And I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. Best practices from just a data point of view, like how things are structured and how they best represent the real world. It doesn't always mean or translate the best policy or practice for a business, though. So keep that in mind.
Yep.
But the way that I see that is it's individuals who refer people to you. At the end of the day, everything's about people, right? Not companies, not organizations. Organizations and companies are groups of people. And in this case, it's not BNI that's giving you the referral. It's the individuals that you networked within BNI. So what does that mean? That means they're actually an account. Now, they don't have to be a client, although they could. And if they refer people to you now, that's awesome. And then become a client later, even better. And it just follows the natural path. Now, as far as tracking where they came from, their lead source should be BNI.
Yep.
Right. So if their lead source is BNI, you know all your BNI people, because you can get to that. And then you can see all of your BNI people and how many through the report that Adam was showing you, how many people or how many jobs they're bringing you, how many are converting, and what are you guys pulling in terms of revenue off those. So that's the way that I would consider to be like the highest level best practice. Now, some people would say that gets in my way. That's too clunky. These people will never be clients, or, I don't want to track things at that level. That's fine. Then you can use lead source, like Adam's saying, and put in BNI in the individual's name, and then it'll shortcut, all the other stuff. So like Adam said, 2 ways that you can approach that. And yeah, it was a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop the screen share here and go to the next bit. So the next one came in from Joel. They were asking who does as much restoration work as cleaning, and then how do you handle equipment tracking, moisture mapping, drying logs, etc. And again, the reason I wanted to showcase this was not to make Joe grumpy. I promise.
I'm not grumpy, but yeah,
was to highlight. A bunch of people jumped in and offered advice. We have a local company that we've worked with and kind of how they handle it to get it kind of working with ServiceMonster and, using Xactimate and so on and so forth. Alan chipped in and mentioned a dry link, use Phoenix. Lisa chimed in with a bunch of kind of input on what they're using in terms there. And so I kind of wanted to shine a light on mostly the fact that, hey, we obviously see you guys and know about you guys. Restoration is a bigger animal. We've talked about, kind of where we want to head with the SM projects and what that looks like. We've talked about that in previous Ask SMUG. So if you guys want more in depth, maybe watch those videos. But mostly I just wanted to encourage this behavior. I always love to see when fellow business owners, managers, and so forth are chiming in here and helping your fellow user with offering advice, because you guys have lived it, you guys have gone through it, the trial and error and so forth. And so when you guys recommend something, it carries a lot more weight, right? Because it's gone through those trials, and you kind of have seen, hey, this absolutely does work for me, or hey, it's a waste of time and money. So always appreciate that. Wanted to shine the light on that, and I think we can probably just move on from there, unless you want to dive into anything else.
No.
The next little bit here, I had a couple of posts on this, and we wanted to kind of address it directly. We're not one to shy away from anything. A couple of different users posted about still having lag and unresponsiveness and things like that. It's not systemic. It's not happening for every user. And so the reports from you guys have been helpful in terms of us trying to track down things. Joe monitors the logs literally daily, hourly, and so forth. We have a good communication there.
I have two KPI dashboards, essentially, both that I built, right? Because I'm that guy. And I look at them a dozen times a day. Plus, they give me notifications when certain triggers trip and so forth. I get notified. So we're paying a lot of attention to that, especially since the infrastructure changes. And generally, the logs look really good. Like we're sub 100 millisecond response times on average, which is incredible. We've seen about a 10% to 12% improvement on our overall network speeds from before the infrastructure change. So that's cool. But yeah, we have some people, and I spoke with Joel. We had a conversation, and I spoke with his staff a little bit so that we could kind of identify what's going on. And that wasn't really that helpful, but even that is helpful. Right? I mean, as a scientist, all data is good data. And then if you get enough data, you get to see where the data is missing, like where are the holes. So I have some ideas. Adam has a task list that he's tasking through development for a couple, and we've talked about this before, for a couple additional performance schemes that I know that we can implement. And especially centered around images. So those of you uploading images from mobile and finding that painful process, I hear you, and you're taking up too much damn server time when you do it. So we have to solve it for you and us, because that'll help things, with these kind of weird cumulative spikes that we see. And it's not like we don't see them, right? So it's not like I'm telling Joel, hey, your experience doesn't show up on my dashboards. Like that's not what I'm saying. But by and large, like 99, again, in statistics, you use what we call P factor. So if I want to take a sampling of, let's say, the fastest 50%, you sort it by speed, you dump anything above 50%, and then you average that out. That's what's called the P50, right? 50%. Our P99, so 99% of all of our traffic, it's just taking the 1% slowest and removing that. Our P99s are sub 100 milliseconds. And then our that X would be called max. That max factor, occasionally we'll see a 2 minute or a 30 second, between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. 99% of those are image calls. They're image uploads. So anyway, we're still looking at it. We still hear you. The feedback is valuable. And, even though it's representing a fairly small portion of our users, we're not just walking away from it. We'll continue to work on it until we see it. Now that I'm communicating with a handful of you guys too, I can call up and say, hey, did we fix it? Hey, did we fix it? And it's never transient, right? Because sometimes they'll operate for a few hours and everything will be smooth. And then they'll hit this weird patch for some reason. And we haven't been able to find that. So still hunting.
Yeah. And I just kind of replied to Daniel there in chat. Thanks for chiming in. But any of you guys who are experiencing this, if you want to reach out and SMUG, Joe and I both monitor that, and we can get in touch with you there. But the easier path might also just be, sending a message into support, and you can have the subject literally be, slowness ongoing, Joe Adam or something like that. And just to ensure the support knows to like ping us, because we have a channel when these things happen, we keep track of that on the support side, and so that they can communicate to the devs, right? And so whichever is easiest for you guys, but letting us know, that you're affected, like Joe said, it still tells us something, and it lets us know who to reach out to, and see if these things are actively helping you guys. But the main thing is that we are continuing to monitor that, and it's something we'll monitor for for the future, and we want to make sure that you guys are running as expected as soon as possible. So moving on, there was a post about 10 days ago or so from Ryan, and it was his ServiceMonster wish list. And I wanted to kind of shine a light on this for a couple of reasons, not for any of the particular features, though all of his requests, I think, were actually well thought out and so forth. He had 4 items that he wanted to have there, and a couple of them we actually already had in our feature backlog, and the other 2 I added. But the main thing I want to shine a light on is when you guys have these kind of wish list items. Alan is another one who does it well. And there's another one that was a couple months ago. I'm blanking on their name on the spot, but they also had a similar list. What's really important when you do this that just makes my life easier, and kind of just make sure that we understand. Obviously, I go back and forth, reach out to you if I needed to, but listing them out in an easy to read and understand format is huge, first and foremost. But telling and talking about the why this is important can really help kind of narrow down all of those use cases and help with priority. And the more that you prioritize the list too, it tells us kind of where the urgency exists and where the bigger win might be on some of these things. Because, if 30 feature requests all come in, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the ones that give you guys the most value first, right? That's kind of the way that it works. No matter what the software is, there's always going to be something that you want, right? And so it's always constantly reprioritizing. That's kind of the agile software development, right? So mostly just wanted to say that if you guys have these, just make sure you're outlining them in a way that shows the priority, and then really make sure you explain kind of why this is important to you, where you think the value is for you, and so on and so forth, because that really, really helps us get a better understanding right away and helps drive kind of that prioritization. So,
yeah, and tying right into that, just real quick, it looks like the team put up a blog post, the latest blog post I wrote last week, which is kind of accidental. It's kind of a weird story, but I started typing up notes for a video that marketing asked me to do, and it ended up being an 800-word blog post for you guys. Go read that. There's some scary stuff in there about navigating your business, but the reason why I'm tying it into this conversation is I talk about how Adam and I kind of prioritize things, at least as an exercise. So thinking about not only what feedback that you give us and that what you do, but in your own business, how do you prioritize things in a way that makes the most sense? And one quick, easy, dirty way is taking index cards, writing down whatever it is you need to do, whether it's a list of projects you need to do within your business, things you need to accomplish. We take all the feedback from you. It goes into a hopper, essentially, right? Then we talk about them. And each one we rank on 2 vectors. One is on impact, and the other one is on how difficult it is. Difficulty in terms of resources, time, money, expenses, employees, like all that. So impact, how much ROI, what's, is it a quality of life thing? Is it going to make employees' lives easier? Is it going to make client lives easier? Bring more money, into the coffers? Like, what's it going to do on the impact and how difficult it is? And you only rank them in terms of big or little. Like, don't try to create like a 5-point or 10-point scaling. No, big or little. And you do that to a bunch of different projects, and then you go through them and you look for special projects where the impact is big and the difficulty is little. We call them little bigs because I did that backwards, but little bigs is where it's low difficulty, low resources, low cash, yet the impact is significant on your business. So this is what Adam and I do all the time. And if let's say we've got a whole stack of big bigs, you know what? And then little bigs just keep popping in. That'll be more impactful to your business than waiting around for us to finish one of these big bigs. Then we're going to put the little bigs in there. We're going to supersede the order. We're going to make sure we get that out to you guys because we know it's going to have an impact on your business. So that's what that reshuffle means. Does it mean we'll never, ever, ever get to big littles, like very difficult and low impact? Yeah, we'll never do those. Why would we ever do those when we have a mountain of little bigs or a mountain of big bigs to do, right? So impact, driving value. And we looked at on multiple vectors, current clients, because that translates into support, right? If we change a button color, the phone melts. Sales, is it going to help drive more sales and keep us competitive? And then also systematic from a systems point of view, is it easier to maintain? Does it mean lower infrastructure costs? Does it mean more flexibility and scalability? So those are kind of the vectors that we look on. And then we've got internal stakeholders, right? Kevin and sales and support and marketing and so forth. Everybody's tugging a little bit to get that prioritized. So I just want to share that with you. There's a new blog post out. I'm sure that Asher and the team will be sharing it. I think it's a pretty impactful one. We've labeled it putting yourself out of business. And this has to do with the changes that are happening, that have been happening since maybe 6 to 8 months after the pandemic, when things started really shaking up. There's some helpful advice in there based off conversations that I've had. So
yeah,
wrap up there.
Alan had a great comment, but hey, but maybe one of the big bigs takes care of a lot of the big littles.
That's right.
And that's exactly it. And that's why there's more of a discussion than just saying, okay, these are the 5 and that's it, give or take. There's tons of discussion on all of them, right? Because sometimes it does warrant, having that big. It's mostly just, constantly doing that exercise, make sure that, we're not losing anything that's valuable to you guys, but also just that we're constantly aware of what's new that's out there, right? We're never just resting on our laurels on, okay, we did the research 8 months ago and we're good for 2 years. No, it's not how it works, right? It's constantly being updated, right? And so that's what the agile world's all about, right? Being able to kind of shift your priorities on the fly with very minimal kind of impact. So,
yep.
Yeah. And really kind of what that exercise also allows, Alan, is like, because I love Alan, by the way. He's on here. I'll put him on the spot. He talks to Joe and I all the time. I've gotten tons of great feedback from him. They were actually at the symposium. Both he and his wife are fantastic people. So
fantastic people.
But the great thing that comes from the discussion, like when Alan has his post and when Ryan had his post, is again, the more that we can see the why. Because imagine we have a stack of, the note card, index card is kind of like a good example from like a physical standpoint. Obviously everything we have is in software. But if you have 10 cards, you understand the why, and you're discussing all these littles, it leads to okay, maybe the real problem is this. And if we do that, it knocks 5 of these off. That's where kind of Alan's point comes into. It's like, the more that we understand the problem, the more that we can potentially have a solution that no one has really even thought of up to this point. Just understanding that friction point allows us to get there. So
absolutely. And that's it. That's engineering in a nutshell, right? I mean, I've spent 15 years of my life building a system by which we can build ServiceMonster on top of, for those very same reasons.
Yep.
Yep.
Very good. The last one is less interesting and more of, I think, just an important thing to mention from time to time. If any of you guys have dealt with IT or just general security or anything like that at all, you know that more often than not, by a large factor, most of the time when something, someone gets hacked, gets access to something, it's usually due to human error. That's the weak point in every security system, essentially.
All the way since Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Yeah.
And opening scene, they called up, what's the modem number? Yeah.
So we occasionally get emails, whether it's to Joe directly, whether it's to me directly, whether it's to our sales and support lines, people, they send, phishing attempts and so forth, and they're very common. I'm sure all of you guys have gotten at one point or another, whether it's email or whether it's text, whatever it might be. We posted an example of what we had, just kind of a reminder, because there's someone who was, they emailed us and they were trying to spoof us, because basically it's just a bot that's going through and grabbing information that it has off.
This one's a little bit more sophisticated, right? And this is how I know that ServiceMonster has arrived, because they're phishing for information, pretending to be us, but they were pretending to be us to us. So, to my knowledge, no customer ever received this. And if they did, it would have been random or from a third-party list that claims to have the ability to get our customers. We get this all the time. We get solicited, like all of our competitors. You can get all of your competitors' customers list. You can just buy it from us. So they run these kind of scams so they can do just that. So it's like, oh, something's up with my ServiceMonster account. And now they've got your info. No, we were not hacked. We were trying to, in SMUG, let you guys know, just as a friendly reminder, phishing attempts can be serious and they can look authentic. Be careful. I get phishing attempts daily.
Yep.
360, man. Ever since we joined Office 360, like I get all kinds of stuff that are like pretend, like here's ServiceMonster's, revenue report for the quarter, or, that kind of junk. And, you have to go get the file, but then I don't know what it does because I don't click on them because I'm not an idiot. But after, there are some things that look really real. Like, for instance, the latest one I got just this was like Tuesday or Wednesday. It was from one of our devs to me saying, yo, Joe, I changed my direct deposit information. Can you help me real quick? I need to get this done ASAP. I know he didn't send me that email. I know he didn't, because we don't communicate via email. We communicate via workplace, which is kind of like Slack, right? So, just be cautious out there. Just a kind of a reminder that best practices, usernames, passwords. We've had to deal with 2 lawsuits centered around data access. And one was a husband and wife team, which happens all too often. And the other is a manager that just kind of, wanted to run amok. So, guys, security, best practices, paying attention to the phishing attempts, like this is serious stuff within your business, because it could really be a distraction if something gets hit. So,
yeah. And this goes in your personal life too. Like, all of the big companies, any of the, Netflix is a big one. I have tons of spoof for my Netflix accounts. Your banks are going to be a big one, right? They're going to try and, hey, someone's using fraudulent activity, click this link to verify and things like that. And so that's why your bank is constantly sending you real messages like, hey, we will never contact you in this manner. That's not how this works, because they're trying to help avoid that. But I wrote up kind of just like a top 5 or 6 things to kind of just list. I'm going to go through them really quick here. You guys can take a look at the post. There's great information just on the internet in general. Kind of, if you guys want to go through with your teams or anything, just kind of as a reminder. But the first and most obvious one is be extremely wary of any email, text, communication, whatever, that is urging you to click on something. And they're usually going to have something that has that sense of urgency, right? Like Joe's example of like, hey, I need to do this ASAP because, in regards to my paycheck. Or, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to lose access to your account. Or, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to, lose $1,000. They'll have some reason for it, right? And so be extremely wary of that. That should be basically a giant red flag immediately to be extra cautious, right? Always double check the from email address. So they can spoof kind of the friendly name that shows up, but they can't spoof the actual email address. The various email clients basically force that, and they'll block a bunch of stuff if you try to spoof that. So that's just kind of a big thing. Like it might say, ServiceMonster or Netflix or your bank poorly spelled out. But if you look at the actual communication, it's like, a bunch of gibberish at gibberish.com, right? So that's a really good example, right?
Wait. You gotta be careful though, because sometimes they get domain names or names in that look real. Like, didn't we see someone that had like ServiceMonster with like a O instead of a?
Yeah,
Just weird shit like that. You gotta it looks real. It looks real and it fools people.
Yeah, that's why you have to kind of go through everything, right? It's never going to always just be, well, sometimes it'll be super obvious, but yeah, the really sophisticated ones will make it extremely hard. Like I said, I got a Netflix one, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago that was talking about like my Netflix had an issue or whatever, and it has all their logo information, has their branding correct. There were just a couple of things that looked at it. And you know what I did? I just ignored the email. I logged into my account and I contacted support. That's kind of how you avoid this, right? That's the other thing is, if there is a real issue, if you feel like you're nervous enough that you need to like go through the normal channels you would, right? Like log into your account. Don't go through the email. Don't go through the text, and so on and so forth. So the other big one, obviously, poor grammar, spelling, formatting is one, whether they're being put together by bots, whether they're put together by someone who speaks English as a second language, whatever it might be. Oftentimes, that can be, a big red flag. Anything that's being sent out from a professional team, whether it's support or marketing related, is going to, be double checking that, right? It's very unprofessional to send something that has poor grammar, spelling, and so forth. So do check for official branding. Like I said, that can be spoofed, at least on certain levels. But it's going to be that if they're spoofing the branding, that means that they're taking that extra time, and most of them, it's a numbers game, right? So most of them aren't taking that extra time unless it's more fruitful for them. So typically that's going to be like your banks and things like that, where they might get additional revenue. But like I said, again, the big thing, if there's any doubt in your mind, reach out through other channels, right? Close the email, log in to your bank on a separate thing, or call your bank support, or whatever it might be. Call the team to be like, hey, I just got this. I'm pretty sure it's a scam. I just want to make sure that things are okay, and so forth. So same reason, if you guys get a cold call and someone is trying to do things, they prey on that, again, that sense of urgency and so forth. So anyways, I know a lot of this stuff is kind of the basics. There's more that you guys can look into. I just think it's one of those good things to kind of shine a light on at certain times, and just kind of make sure you're talking with your team, because like I said, the weak point is almost always, no matter how secure everything else is, human nature, the human condition just allows us to be scammed sometimes, and that can lead to pretty major issues if you let them into your network or so forth. So from there,
always
though,
the skeptic, always the skeptic, but not so skeptical, not so open-minded that our brains fall out.
Oh my goodness, exactly. That's all I got for you, though, Joe. It's definitely a meaty show. Yeah,
50 minutes. Sorry, guys. Hey, enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for your attention. And if always you need any help, feel free to reach out. See ya.